The NFL season doesn't stop until the Super Bowl happens, but here we are back again, week 6. We had some good games last week. We had some bad games last week. We had some teams that couldn't seem to win. Anything you got from last week? What were your
No,
thoughts?
we had coaches fire. We had a coach fired too, which is probably deserved, undeserved. The fact is he still wasn't winning. He didn't win before Rodgers got there. He wasn't winning after. The bigger joke is that now they've changed their offensive coordinator, so it's no longer Rodgers' friend, and now they're going with another guy. So Ulbrich, who will be the coach, is going with the new offensive coordinator. It's all kind of a big. It's a joke actually, and the idea that Rodgers didn't factor in on any of it makes no sense at all. But it's that's how the Jets are. And I'll tell you, the thing about Rodgers is he was in Green Bay where there's no angry media or gotcha press, and he was getting a lot of attention there. So that story's on fire. It's not going to die down, and they have a really tough game that we're going to preview in this session this week against the Bills. So it's only going to become a hotter seat for Rodgers. He's not going to be remembered just for this though. He still had a great career, but this could be his last year, and it could go down in flames. We'll see what happens. Maybe it'll be the path that Favre took, where he'll be gone from the Jets after this year, and some other team will get him, and he'll have some kind of learning year, sort of like Favre did when he went to the Jets. But let's
Do
get
you think
rolling.
do you think
Yeah.
Salah's getting another job?
Absolutely, right away. He has a lot of respect. I don't think he's a head coach though. I mean, your head coach should seem or appear intelligent, and when you see him in the press conferences, he seems unaware of his own surroundings half the time. And
Very aloof.
people who deal with him every day are going to get that faster.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely find a defensive coordinator spot somewhere,
Yeah,
but
he
let's
might
jump
go.
right into the
He's friends with all those key coaches, McVay, Niners coach and Packers
Didn't he
coach.
come
So
up with Shanahan? Am I wrong about
all those
that? I
guys
thought I
came
heard
up
something
together.
about that.
Those guys are dominating a lot of head coaching positions. He'll get a job. I don't know if he wants a job this year, if he needs one. He still has his kids in school. Who knows what he wants to do? He's going to have to transfer everybody. But if he wanted to, he could definitely get a job on either the Niners. They could make him a defensive assistant or whatever they'd call him, or the Packers. They'd all hire him. He just
Yeah,
probably doesn't want it.
the one thing I heard Rogers talking about is he was like, "I know all of his kids, and I don't want his kids getting bullied at school tomorrow."
You know what? That was a lever Rogers pulled for his own sympathy. I think
Yeah,
that was
totally.
ridiculous. Actually, that was insulting. Like, keep that out of it, dude. That was to me, that made him totally, like, it just shows he would pull any lever he could on anybody to get the upper hand so that he could win this battle of appearances.
Well, glad he's not a Packer anymore, but let's jump right into this first game. We've got the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Niners can't seem to put it together right now without Purdy.
Yeah, but this is a get well game for them because Seattle has so many injuries on defense. I think the Purdy's gonna have a great game, at least 3 touchdowns in this one. I think this is a walk away for the Niners. Mason has a big game. I would start all my regulars here. Purdy, Mason, Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle should all have good games, and this could be a 3 touchdown one for Purdy. Seattle's defense is really the problem here. They have a lot of young guys. It's a really talented squad, but too many injuries right now to overcome. And you could see that in the last couple of games. They are not doing a good job. When you're allowing 28 points to the Giants, that's not a good stand. That's not a good showing. That's not a good offensive team. So I do think Seattle's offense still has a lot of guys you want to look at here. Certainly Geno Smith's played well. He's not one of the top guys, but he's definitely in the next 15 to 20. Walker's been strong. Metcalf is a start, and Jigba and Locke. It just depends how deep your league is. And Fant's been okay. But I definitely think this one's like a 35-21 Niners win here.
Yeah, I think Mason's going to have a great game. Speaking of Mason, he's actually in the discount today on iBet Networks. You can get him at 53 yards. It looks like it's a 33% discount. So take advantage of that while you can.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Sweet. Now let's jump right into the Sunday games. We've got the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Chicago Bears in Chicago.
No, this is actually, so this game's in Tottenham. And
Oh, this game
so
this is the 6:30 game, huh?
yeah, so
Super
there are going to be
early.
a lot of these games this year. So it's easy to get these surprised on you. But yeah, this one's in Tottenham. And yeah, I think really what we're starting to see is the Bears offense is starting to gel. Caleb's looking good. Jacksonville played a little bit better offensively. I still think I wouldn't be starting Lawrence in any leagues. Etienne, this makes him a little bit more of a starter. Bears run D is solid, though. It's not an overwhelming start. I'd proceed with caution on most of the Jacksonville guys that starts this week. In terms of the Bears, I think Caleb's a start now. Caleb's becoming a soft start. He's probably in the lower 10 starters. So you look at 10, you go 11 to 15. That's where Caleb sits. So it just depends who you have. D'Andre Swift, big game. Finally used them, but it took a little balance in the passing attack to get Swift free. And I think another good start this week. DJ Moore had a big game. There was a great pass touchdown from Caleb last week. And Cole Kmet, somebody you want to look at. Odunze is coming up in deeper leagues, maybe 3 and 4 wide receiver leagues. Good to look at. I think good game for the Bears here, and in a game where the Bears were looking like they are showing, they're kind of proving on their expectations. I think the Bears here 30-20 over the Jags.
Sweet. And okay, sweet. So the Bears are going to cover the 2.5. Yeah, I think Swift, he can finally get some work out there now that they're not one dimensional anymore. They can actually throw the ball and they can run the ball. So they can make some stuff happen out there.
Yeah, once you put the fear in the defense that you can throw it downfield, they have to respect the running game.
Yeah, it's like when the Packers played Malik Willis that one week and he was able to throw the ball. It was because they thought it was run, run, run. Then they were
Absolutely.
like, oh, shit, it's not run, run, run.
Yeah, well, when you get all those guys in man coverage, you definitely have some opportunities for quarterbacks who can pinpoint the ball.
Speaking of the Packers, we've got them coming up next. We've got the Cardinals taking on the Packers in Lambeau, 10 o'clock game on Sunday.
Yeah. I think, the video game, Kyler Murray is definitely a start in fantasy leagues, as well as Connor. This is a team that just seems to figure out how to lose. Although they did come up with a big win last week. Harrison Jr., McBride, these guys are all good fantasy starters. But Green Bay's defense has been opportunistic. They've forced turnovers in every game. They have picks in almost every game. And I'd see Green Bay here in another strong performance. You see Jordan Love starting to play well as he gets more time under him, and the knee injury is not a factor anymore. Josh Jacobs is running well, but they're using a really balanced attack with Wilson as well. So Wilson seemed to be getting 10 carries or 10 plus touches, and they're trying to save Jacobs for later in the season, and in both in the season and later in these games when the bigger plays come on. Jaden Reed's been strong. You're going to see Dobbs back in this one, was kind of, pouting a little bit, but, Green Bay did the right thing. I think they handled it really quickly, suspending him for a game. But you're going to see that 3-pronged attack again. Watson's going to be questionable, so take a look at that. And Tucker Kraft is really turning into a big target here. He's becoming the number one, not Musgrave. So those are guys you definitely want to see in the Packers. I think Packers in this one, 35-21.
Perfect. So we're going to get over, and the Packers are going to cover that. What is it, 5.5? I don't like the 5.5 to the Packers. I think that's going to be a closer game than that.
You know what? It seems like that because the Packers have been kind of sluggish, but I also think that you're going to see them put together a full game today on defense and an offense.
Yeah, I agree. Now let's jump right into the next one. We've got the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee. Looks like the Titans are giving 2.5.
Yeah, this is a real questionable game just because, you have the injuries here with Anthony Richardson. He's limited in practice this week, so you're going to have to check in on that. I think a lot of the fans probably want to see Joe Flacco start. Joe Flacco goes out there and he throws touchdowns. And it's not, he hasn't had an interception this year. I think he's got 5 or 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's played well. And now I think fantasy-wise, you're really looking to see, is it going to be Richardson, who's looked like he's thrown the ball all over the field, or Flacco? To me, I think you have a great opportunity here to have a young quarterback learn from a veteran quarterback who's won a Super Bowl, and has Super Bowl and playoff experience. And I think it'd be a good chance for Richardson to sit and watch. But that is not what the organization says. They're going to start Richardson if he can play. That makes your players here questionable. But I think if you see the Flacco's going to start, I think Downs and Pierce are guys you want to look at on offense. And we still have Taylor here, who's been good, not great all the time, not the number one guy we saw 3 or 4 years ago. In terms of Tennessee, this is not, they have not been good offensively. This is one of the worst teams, I think, offensively in the league. Levis is 20th. You're not going to start him. Pollard's been okay, actually. That's been a little bit of a bright spot, and you'll get an occasional from Ridley and Hopkins, but these guys are Hopkins kind of is in name alone, and Ridley doesn't get enough consistent looks to be an offensive weapon in a fantasy league. I'd say here in this game, I think this is a close win for Indianapolis, like a 21-17 win for Indianapolis.
Okay, sweet. Now, cool. Next game we've got coming up, we've got the Houston Texans taking on the New England Patriots in New England. What are your thoughts?
I think this is going to be a walk-away blowout. New England is going to go with their young quarterback. I think you see Houston's defense very aggressive, very opportunistic, probably going to force 2 or 3 turnovers in this one. I would not start anybody on New England this week. I would be aware of all of them. In terms of Houston, I would start all my regulars, Stroud. You do have Nico Collins, who went on the IR this week. So I think that shows Stephon Diggs. That's going to boost his numbers. He's been great anyway, but that's going to boost his numbers as well as Tank Dell. So if you have those guys now step up to definitive 1 and 2s. And then you have Schultz also probably going to get some more action. I think all these guys on Houston are starts. They're going to get a lot of turnovers in this one, I would say, and a lot of good field position. I think this is going to be a runaway from Houston, 35-17.
I think the Patriots starting Drake May, it's a little bit too early. And now, I'm not going to say Brissett was any better, but I think Drake May is still not. He still needs more time.
It's a lost season, though, so they probably figure, as long as he's not getting injured and getting pulverized. The problem is their offensive line isn't great, and Houston's going to bring a lot of pressure, and they're going to definitely force him into some turnovers. And that's the only thing is if he gets injured, you don't want to see a guy get injured, but you want to get him the playing time because New England's not going anywhere this year.
Here's something. I was listening to the show, The Facility, this morning, and Shady McCoy was talking, and he was like, yeah, when I was on the Bills, they had a meeting with all the captains, and they sat us down, and they said, do we want to start Josh Allen this week? It was a bad game, and it was a time where he could go out, and they knew they were probably going to win it because they were playing the Raiders then. And it was a great game for him to start because it's just a confidence booster. I don't think this is a good game to put him out there and start him. I think this is
but at the same token, guys have to play. And ultimately, you're not avoiding the schedule. The schedule is your schedule. And as I look at it now, when the Packers, who I am a fan of, when they started Jordan Love against the Vikings, and their, defense is becoming one of the more vaunted defenses in the league, I myself was like saying, well, maybe it'd be better to bring him back. But you know what? He had that look at the Vikings. They're going to play them again this season. And Love now will know much better. And if you looked at his performance in that game, his second half was far different than his first half. And so by having that look at that Vikings defense is going to prove extremely valuable later in the season when they face each other again.
Couldn't agree more. Now let's jump right into the next game. We've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans. Saints are going to be getting, Tampa Bay's giving 3.5. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think New Orleans Saints are going the wrong way. And, if they don't have their quarterback, and that's certainly, it looks doubtful at this point,
I think he has been ruled out already for this week.
Yeah, and so that's definitely a problem for them. And I think that throws into, Tampa Bay's defense, kind of middle of the road, bend don't break style. I mean, I think you don't want to be going here Spencer Rattler. I mean, come on, let's go. Olave, that's going to hurt Olave for sure. Kamara, maybe a little bit more, solid in this one. What you always see when younger quarterbacks are unproven guys is the tight ends become more valuable. Juwan Johnson's maybe somebody in deeper leagues you want to take a look at. Anytime there's a young quarterback or a quarterback, like this Rattler, the tight end becomes a friendly target. So I'd say Kamara and Johnson. Johnson is a sleeper. Olave, look, you're going to start him because he's one of your main guys that you picked, who's had a really nice start this season. But Rashid Shaheed and Olave, definitely risky picks in this one. Tampa Bay, this has always been a close game, but I think New Orleans defense has been okay, but hasn't looked that great in the last couple of weeks. So I'm kind of confused by who they are defensively. I think Baker Mayfield has a decent game in this one. Bucky Irving starting to turn into the number 1 running back here in Tampa Bay. Definite sleeper in deeper leagues. Mike Evans, Godwin, good starts here, and Otten's been fairly productive, right in the middle of the pack of tight ends. I would say in this game, I think Tampa Bay is going to stay in control of this one. This one, 31-17. New Orleans seems to be going the wrong way, and getting that injury right now is not a good help at the quarterback position.
Yeah, it's a tough injury, especially at the end of the game like that. So here we go, right into the next game. We've got the Cleveland Browns taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are giving 10 points. I think that's terrible. I'd be all over the Browns getting 10 in this one. What are your thoughts?
My thought is that, Stefanski would not be playing Watson unless the organization wanted to keep Watson. And I think that the team he's losing the team, unfortunately. And I think a lot of these guys, Amari Cooper wants to be traded. He could wind up somewhere like Buffalo or Dallas again, or some other team that's looking for veteran leadership at the wide receiver position. So I think this team's going the wrong direction. I think they'll get a boost when Nick Chubb comes back, hopefully in the next few weeks. But right now, these guys are all risky plays here. I mean, Philadelphia's defense has been in the middle of the road. middle of the road defense, giving up a lot of yardage. So I think that Watson here could be productive, but we haven't seen it. So why would you play him? And I think none of these guys are really worth taking a chance on. Philadelphia is still kind of riddled with injuries with a lot of key players. So I would check the status on this. But I see the 10 being a real number. And I think that, especially the way that Saquon's played, I think Saquon, this is the Cleveland Browns defense actually is better than it looks, mostly because their offense hasn't really controlled the ball that well. So they've been put under pressure a lot. But I think Hurts in this game and Barkley should have strong games. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, check the injury status on these guys and get dirt. I'd play all these starters. The only thing is, I don't think it's a big high scoring game, and I'd be surprised if the Browns score more than 10. I look at this as like a 24-10 game, barely nudging above that line. I think it's a tight game. I think the spread's there for a reason, and I think it's right.
Okay. Well, I think I just don't see how the Eagles. 10's a lot. They're a team that's having a lot of trouble scoring. I think the Browns are going to be able to cover that one. But let's jump right into the next game. We've got a MVP candidate in Jaden Daniels taking on the other MVP candidate, Lamar Jackson. Ravens are going to be giving 4.5. What are your thoughts on this game?
I think the spread's probably wrong. This one seems to me like it should be just the standard you're playing at home game spread.
I was wrong. It's 6.5, by the way.
Yeah, that's too many. Yeah, you're right. That it is 6.5. I think it's too many. It's not really respectful of the the Commanders, I should say, whatever they're calling themselves now. They've had 3 names and none of them have been good, really. The football team and whatever they called each other. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I guess I am old school. But Washington's kind of not getting the respect they deserve. The problem really here, so with Washington, you have some, Daniels is a must start in every fantasy league. He's played tremendously well. Looks like an aged veteran. Robinson's been, eking his way up. They have a nice core of running backs. So the problem here is that, Eckler's good, Robinson's good, but now they have McNichols who's kind of look good as well. So you really have a 3-headed kind of monster at running back. Not a great fantasy situation for anybody here. Probably makes them a non-play. Wide receiver McLaurin's really coming on. He could have a top 10 year. He's kind of an under the radar guy for many years, but has been awesome just because he played with so many bad quarterbacks. This is really his chance to flourish, and he'd be a must start in almost every fantasy league. Ertz has been okay, serviceable, second rung kind of tight end, not your top 10, but he's coming on as the quarterback play is actually improving as well. And I think with the Ravens here, really what, you look at Derrick Henry and what do you think? Here's the thing. Most people like really how you analyze this Derrick Henry thing. He's been like the number 1 running back in football. Now, we even said like, oh, his tires are bald. But here's the thing. The reason that makes him so good right now is that Jackson is like takes a half a player from the defense beyond in the running game. And so really he's getting numbers every time he runs the ball, Henry. Not like he never got these numbers when he was with Tennessee. And most teams don't have this because you don't have that dual threat runner. And so with Jackson having those 2 running backs in the backfield, it's kind of uniquely awesome. And it's really boosted Henry into some really good coverages. And that's what they're taking advantage of. So this dual-headed running game has been unbelievably dangerous. And you see Henry making these big, long runs, and he's incentivized now playing with Jackson. He's getting better matchups. That's really all this is. This is like having, 3 great wide receivers on your team or 2 great wide receivers and a tight end like the Cowboys had back in the day, or any team with loaded talent. They're overmatching the defenses based on matchups. And I think, Jackson's definitely your starter. Henry's your starter. Flowers is a good starter. And likely the tight ends here are a nightmare, likely Andrews, and getting too much playing time. That's a toss up and only a play in deeper leagues.
Well, when you play the Ravens, I mean, you're already losing a guy just to cover Lamar Jackson. You gotta hang someone back because he could run at any time. But I think the big thing with Henry is he's one of the last real running backs I think we're going to see in this league. All the other guys, they're 4 or 5 years and they're done. Henry,
you are seeing that. That is true. He is one of the legacy guys who's got a lot of carries in him, and he still keeps going, and he's been kind of amazing. I think it's going to be a really high scoring game, which, kind of is counter. Like you could see this game being a low scoring. There's just too many offensive players on the field. I think 31-28. I do think Baltimore is going to edge out and win this one at home. They seem to are winning those close games now, like they were losing them earlier in the season. But I think Washington is definitely going to put up a performance. I think the 6.5 is wrong, frankly.
I think it's too high as well. Now, let's jump into the next game. We've got the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Denver Broncos in the Mile High Stadium. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I still think this is the best team for Davante Adams to go to, and no one really talks about it. They keep talking about other teams. But and they talk about the Bills, and I just think it's because they haven't been mentioned, and it's because like the Chargers are kind of rebuilding. But how fast could the rebuild be if Devontae Adams went to the LA Chargers? I think it'd be pretty fast. Herbert is still kind of dinged up with that ankle injury. He's going to play. There's been no talk about him not playing, but he's definitely limited. And these wide receivers have not helped him. I mean, Lab McConkey's been okay. There's not a lot offensively here. They're trying to win low scoring games. But, if you brought somebody like Devontae in on the squad, all of a sudden it would start opening things up for Dobbins and Edwards. It's the same thing we talked about. Edwards, he's not a great running back anymore, or well, he leaves the Ravens and now, teams have to play him and they're stacking 8 or 9 guys because you can single cover all these wide receivers on the Chargers. There's nobody I'd be worried. I'd be playing man on all these guys and sneaking the extra guy against the run game on them all day because there's nobody here who scares you. And that's just the problem with Herbert's numbers right now. And that's where this team is. And, Denver now is kind of one of the teams that's kind of arching up. You're seeing Bo Nix performing better. He's not a fantasy starter per se, but he's somebody he might be on your bench. Nobody's really a fantasy starter on either of these teams. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's going to be a really low scoring 20-17, 17-14 game. Kind of fun because you have the high end coaches in this game. With Sean Payton and Harbaugh, I think it's a high end coaching kind of look game where it's going to be super defensive, a lot of punts and a lot of field position.
I think if you like the Adams to the Chargers trade, Herbert's a guy you pick up and you just stash on your bench. Because if Herbert gets Adams, he's going to be a guy that you're going to want playing every week.
100%. And I think, that's a move where you'll see guys in advance. And nothing has happened with Devontae Adams. And in fact, we're going to talk about that game next, but nothing has happened on the trading. I thought, usually if a trade like that's going to happen, it happens at the beginning of the week. So the team can install something in the game plan for that player. And Adams is still dinged up with the hamstring. So nothing has happened at all. And to me, that says maybe the Jets have backed off. I don't think I'd go to the Jets if I was Devontae Adams. I mean, I don't know if I'd go to the Saints. Why would I want to go to either of those teams? They both suck. And I bet that Adams sitting back there and saying, the Saints don't look any better. I don't necessarily want to go there. Look, Derek Carr's now out. He's old. I'm telling you, Herbert is the best place for him to go. I would even more than Buffalo because, I mean, if it was me, I'd rather go to LA than go to Buffalo.
I will say,
and Devontae has way more pub. He can do way more commercials with Taco Bell if he moves that Taco Bell house to LA.
I will say they did just come out with a report. I believe it was this morning, Rappaport, that Devontae Adams, his main team he wants to go to is the Jets. Now, he didn't say that he was like he only would go to the Jets and he was demanding that trade. There were a bunch of other teams on the list, which actually one of the teams they're playing, which is the next game we'll jump into, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Raiders. Now, Steelers, they're a team with they got a quarterback problem out there. I mean, we've talked about it for the past 4 weeks. When is it time to play Russell Wilson?
Well, I think it's getting close. I think what's going on in the rumors you hear from Pittsburgh is that, finally, if you look at what Tomlin's saying, Tomlin's starting to say things like, Russell's starting to look better. He's starting to be able to run the full game plan. I don't think you're seeing any improvement with Fields. And, a lot of this stuff is really who are you getting it against? It's not like when you hit or what you hit, like in baseball, it's when you hit it. And can you hit the good guys? And that's in football, it's the same. Are you beating good guys? Look at last week. Dallas is not a good defense. They were missing both their top players who are their top playmakers on defense. And Pittsburgh didn't do much offensively. It was kind of a pathetic showing. So, and there's talent here. You would see these guys be lifted. I think that Russell Wilson would be a better choice here. I think in the back of their heads, they think that, Fields, if they could develop him, would be better for the long-term look of the franchise. But in reality, to win now, Russell Wilson's a better solution here than Justin Fields. I'm sorry. Fields has not looked better. Decision-making still looks poor. Lots of bad throws. Can't create any kind of drives. And, they should not have lost that game to Dallas. Dallas is not good. That was not like, I felt like I watched that game thinking Dallas was great last week because they beat them. I just felt like Pittsburgh sucked on offense. And they couldn't do anything when they got the ball. I mean, Dak made a lot of bad throws in that game to still win that game. And that was just because Pittsburgh's offense was inept. But anyway, let's get into this game more specifically. Pittsburgh at Las Vegas. Okay, same crap. I think Pittsburgh goes into this thinking, okay, we could stick with Justin Fields and win this crappy game against the Las Vegas Raiders team that probably isn't going to have Devontae Adams. and hasn't done much offensively. They're changing quarterbacks now, going with Aiden O'Connell, which I think is a better move really than going with Team
Minshew.
Gardner Minshew, because Minshew hasn't looked great anyway. But the Vegas Raiders without Devontae, they don't have much talent. I mean, they do have this great Brock Bowers is becoming one of the top tight ends, which is really great. I watch, Bowers in college at Georgia. He looks like he's developing into one of the top guys. That's somebody that's really the only guy here I'd play here. Madison is a good running back, but they just haven't been able to, and he's starting to get more looks. So I would he's kind of a sleeper pickup. But they don't have. I mean, Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, DJ Turner. With Devontae out, these guys aren't big guys that anybody's afraid of defensively. Certainly not the Pittsburgh defense. I think it's a tough game for O'Connell, a tough look. I'd probably play here Brock Bowers because I think that's again a friendly throw to him. Bowers has been top 5 for tight ends this year, and I think you'll see him have a decent productive game. But it's tough against these Steelers linebackers. In terms of Pittsburgh's offense, I'd play Harris in this one because I think Harris is going to get enough looks to be productive. Fields, forget it. Pickens, forget it. I wouldn't play any of these guys. Maybe Freiermuth as a play. I think this is like a 17-10 game. It's a really old scoring kind of like hit, punch, knockout game. It'll be defensive. There's not going to be a lot of offense in this game.
Now, if you're the Steelers and you play Russell Wilson and he does bad and you give him 2 or 3 games, do you just revert back to Fields and
You
then just go
could.
into
I think
full
that's a
rebuild
big.
mode?
Why not? Why not? What does it matter?
I totally, I agree. I think that's why Russell Wilson will likely get the start because if it doesn't go well, you're paying nothing for him. That is the freest contract in the NFL. And I mean,
Right. I mean, he's making $1 million or something. I mean, it's not a big deal for them. But I'm not sure that that's going to happen this week or it's going to happen next week. We'll see. The only thing we know is that Minshew's not starting, and he'll be in there. But again, you're not winning your fantasy league if you're counting on these guys anyway.
no, I
So
totally agree.
hopefully you're not counting on any of these guys. I think Bowers has been awesome though. That's definitely the one guy you want to start in this game.
Then up after that one, we have the Detroit Lions taking on oh God, the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. What are your thoughts on this one? Dallas
Yeah,
is,
I
I
mean,
think, no, Detroit's giving 3.
well, this is becoming like a term that people are using when a team goes over another team and they're calling it like a boat race. I mean, I could see that this could be a boat race for Detroit, like where Detroit just runs right over Dallas. Keep in mind, still no Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence is out. So their defense, I mean, you got a fakey look last week because they played Pittsburgh, so they were able to kind of hold them down to nothing. But really, is that Pittsburgh holding themselves down to nothing? Probably. I think in this with Detroit here in this game, Goff is a play, Gibbs is a play, Montgomery's a play, St. Brown's a play. And I look for Laporta to have a game here because getting the bye was big for him because he was a little dinged up heading into the year. And bye's going to be big for him. And I think you're going to see Laporta have a good one in this one, his first really good one. He's been kind of disappointing. All right, but not as big as he was last year. For Dallas, I think this is a really tough game. They really don't have anything in the running game. Detroit's a very physical team. I think, Dak is a play, but I mean, I wouldn't be like, this could be like a 2 touchdown, 2 interception game for Dak. CeeDee Lamb, you have to play. Jake Ferguson's played fairly well this year, been productive. Those are about the guys. I mean, I don't know, as I look at this, I don't know why this wouldn't be like 40 or like 38-21 Detroit. I can't see really how Dallas would stop them. They're so straight line front, they're going to just bash them and run over them and run their offense. I don't really see what Dallas can do to stay in this game.
I mean, we saw how much trouble Dallas had against the Steelers, and I think that Detroit team plays a very similar defense to those Steelers, so it's likely low scoring for the Cowboys, I think.
They put a lot of pressure, and we've seen Dak when he has pressure on him make a lot of mistakes throwing the ball. And I think that's the kind of game where Dak maybe is like a 2 touchdown, 2 interception guy. And CeeDee Lamb is going to be productive because that's all they have.
Did you see that video of CD yelling at Dak though on the sidelines?
Yeah, they're unhappy. Everyone's unhappy. This is not a balanced team. I mean, you can't go through, 17 weeks in the NFL without a running game.
Yeah, I think it's just they're in a tough
And
spot right now.
and I don't even like that CeeDee Lamb running. I think that's the stupidest thing. He's not like a fleet guy. He's not like when you see the Packers run like Jaden Reed on those sweeps. Jaden Reed blows through guys. Like he's not getting clocked. Every time I see CeeDee Lamb run the ball, he's getting clocked. I'm thinking, why are they doing that? He's not a quick, fleet-footed kind of guy. He's a big guy, big, strong guy, but more of the prototype wide receiver where he's fast and quick enough. But he's not quick enough like a Jaden Reed who's just like blowing by guys and just running around guys. CD's taking a lot of unnecessary hits if you ask me.
Do you think the Detroit's going to cover the 3.5?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a runaway.
Sweet. Now, after that, we have the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. Talk about a terrible game where those Panthers, they got to be sitting there watching everyone that they drafted do well on other teams. It's like us with the White Sox. Just watching them do good
Like
anywhere
that.
else but the
That's
White
actually
Sox, you know?
terrible. Yeah, I mean, I think this game on paper, it's one of those games. It's for them, it's division game, and it looks like it should be a blowout. It's just somehow, having Dalton in there will make this game a little bit closer. I think that Kirk Cousins has been okay. He's not like blowing me away with his play. I know he's won some games, so like that whole Kirk Cousins lore comes in because he's won some late games. He's not blowing me away with his play though. Bijan Robinson's definitely a starter. Cousins to me would be like my second guy. I wouldn't be starting him. There's got to be better guys you can have in most fantasy leagues. London's been good. He's been very productive this year with Cousins. Probably going to have his best year this year. And Pitts had a huge game last week after they ignored him for an entire game where he had 0 catches. He had a huge game in his last one. I think getting the extra rest here coming off the Thursday game will help this team. They definitely look like the Sixes. This is one of those sneaky NFL games where it's like. That looks like on paper obvious, and you see all the suckers come in and bet Atlanta, and some reason, for some reason, this is going to be a one possession game, and Atlanta's probably going to eke this out. But watch it just fall under that 6. I just have suspicions about games like this. They look worse. It looks obvious. When the game looks obvious, that's when you should question your bet. That's what I would say. So Andy Dalton in this one, he's not a starter. Chuba Hubbard's starting to come on a little bit, having the quarterback play. It's really helping. Deontay Johnson, kind of interesting now. With Dalton getting a little more production. Those are the guys I'd probably look at here. The rest of these guys look at Sanders at tight end. There's nobody really you want to start here, but I do think Andy Dalton makes somebody like Hubbard a little bit more palatable as a running back in the fantasy league. But this game to me, I do think for some reason this is going to be closer than anybody thinks, like a 27-24 Atlanta win.
Well, there's a reason the Red Rifle's been in the league for so long, just like Joe Flacco. They know how to score. They know what to do. I mean, they've seen these defenses. They're not the best, but they know how to make plays when they need to.
I always thought Dalton was overrated when he was on the Bengals, and now I think he's probably underrated just because he's had some weird stops like the Bears and playing for some crappy organizations. So I think now, it's kind of a nice little kind of watch him, it's kind of nice to see, him perform a little bit. He's still a good player. I just thought he was way overrated. They were talking about like second coming like Esiason or something when he was there. And he's certainly, he's been good. He just was never as good as people thought he was.
Yeah, and I think at that time when he was on the Bengals, that was when that was a tough division. That was when Flacco was on the Ravens, and Steelers still had Big Ben, and they were in a tough spot
that's
always.
Tough division for sure.
Their defense was always good though, but I just remember that being a very tough division back then.
For sure.
Now let's jump right into the Sunday night game. We've got the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the New York Giants. I think Neighbors is still out in this one.
Yeah, the Bengals kind of a snake bit team. I mean, they almost win. Their offense is like top 5. If you look at their offense, it's like this is like fantasy dream kind of game. I mean, the Giants are good defensively, but I don't see why Cincinnati won't put up 28 or 31 points in this game. Joe Burrow's been playing well. I mean, despite what you say, like Joe Burrow's still been positive, and him with Chase and Higgins, this is still a very good offensive team. And I think Chase Brown's been okay. Not a great starter against a good run D here, but Jamar Chase, Higgins, and Burrow definitely starters in this game. Giants are kind of eking out some wins. I mean, that was a good win against Seattle last week, especially how it came. It came on a blocked field goal, which it's funny. I was watching Inside the NFL, which is that old show that they used to have on HBO, and now it's on like NFL and like Country Western. And Belichick did an awesome job breaking down like field goal blocks. And that's essentially, and they showed where a guy on Seattle showed a tendency. And because he showed a tendency, which was to drop down on all fours almost when he was blocking, they had a guy that went right over the middle. And that's what led to that Giants touchdown. It was kind of awesome coaching. And it was an awesome breakdown by Belichick. I haven't seen it. It's pretty interesting. He's actually really good. You can see why he won, because that was like a good teaching moment. I mean, it's honestly, a lot of these shows are trying to be more analytical with the teaching, or they break down the films, but he's really good at it. And you can see why he was a good coach, even though he probably is a pain in the ass to deal with. You can see his coaching prowess a little bit on that show.
Well, you think he's going to end up in New York?
No, he hates them. He's not. He hates them. I mean, if in that same show, by the way, he talked about the Jets and he talked about how dysfunctional the organization was. He was like saying, "Okay, he fired Saleh. It's like he's not the problem. You know, it's organizational. There's no way he's going to the Jets. That's the longest shot on the board. If Vegas had that Belichick's going to the Saints, that'd be the longest bet on the board. But in terms of the Giants here, Daniel Jones has been not terrible. Check the status of Neighbors. That's a big problem. And Singletary, that's a big problem. Those are two big injuries to come back from in this game, I think. And you got the late Sunday game, so you're not going to have much opportunity to stash any other guys. So I think you're going to have to go without these guys this week because they're probably going to be game time decisions. So I think if that's the case, and you're not going to get those weapons for Jones, who's actually been okay. If you look at his production, he's probably middle of the league. I don't think the Giants will even be in this game. I think this could be like a 31-17 game walk away for the Bengals.
I will say, if you're in a spot where you have a bunch of guys that you aren't playing this week, Tracy Jr., he's going to be a great guy with no Neighbors, no Singletary. I think he had a great week last week, and it's very opportune pickup right now.
He was one of the fantasy guys. I think we talked about him. Did you grab him in one of your leagues?
I did have him in one of my leagues, and it was a great pickup. He was worth way more than Singletary has ever been worth any week.
Yeah, no, Singletary hasn't looked and Singletary may have benefited from playing with Stroud, because he has not been explosive in any way. I've watched a couple of times when he's played. He looks flat, like he can't get to the outside. And he was great in that game against the Ravens in the playoffs last year. I'm not seeing anything from Singletary like we saw last year.
No explosiveness. It looks like it's gone. Now, let's jump right into the Monday night matchup. We've got the Buffalo Bills taking on the Jets without a coach.
Well, the Jets defense has been great. So, again, that belies the kind of question mark of why did Saleh get fired, because he's the defensive coordinator. He is the head coach, but he's the guy running that defense, and that defense is top 5. So that makes no sense. So here, we know we're going to have a tough game for these Buffalo guys. I mean, I think at most you're going to have 20 points scored. You see, they held down the Minnesota offense pretty well last week. Even with some bad, you had 3 interceptions, they still only scored like 20 points. I mean, so that shows you how well the Jets defense played. In this one, these wide receivers for Buffalo are really becoming kind of a problem because you can't really count on them. Allen doesn't know where they're going to be. And so they had some bright spots early in the season. That makes a lot of sense to me because teams don't know how to play them. And then when teams start figuring out what to do defensively, you shut down these young guys. And then it's like, who's got the next move? It's going to be really low scoring. Really low scoring.
Did you see the hit on Allen? Do you think he got a concussion last week?
Yeah, that was stupid. That was stupid to keep him in that game, and also stupid that they ran the offense they did. But it's hard to say. I'm not on the sideline. The coach has to make those decisions. But that's not, to me, if you look at their head coach, I'm not one of my favorites. Josh Allen's is saving him and keeping his job pretty much. So I'd say the only guys that start in this, I think Josh Allen's kind of a not a great start, but you're not going to bench him. You can't bench those number ones. Cook has been great. Really great. He's been really awesome now that they've relied on the running game. He's been really good, top 10 back here. The rest of these guys are all question marks. That's why Devontae is a guy here who could make a big difference, especially with these young wide receivers. Coleman and Shakur are good players. They're just not ready, and so they really put a lot of pressure on Allen here, and you're going to see it in a game like this against the Jets. Do I think the Jets are going to win with an interim coach? They get a boost. Who hasn't looked good though? None of these guys have literally looked good offensively. It's funny that it is all going on Rodgers, but Garrett Wilson had his first big game last week. I watched the Jets play because I like Rodgers. Was a Packers fan. I still like Rodgers. Their offensive players are not playing well. I don't know if it's just the line but Breece Hall hasn't looked good. He's looked average. Only because their offense chooses to run him often does he get a lot of touches, because that's what they have. The best player on this team really consistently has been Tyler Conklin, and he's so slow. He's just like a gigantic movie. Like, I don't know. He's he looks like a dump truck. He's a massive guy.
Well, and
he's been the best guy on the team. All the other guys have not been good. I mean, Wilson had one good game last week, but he looks like they're not on the same page with Rodgers. Lazard is drops, all too many drops. Brees Hall. I mean, I could see people be like, "Oh, Rodgers sucks." I don't think so. I think he's trying to make throws that in his past years were guys running the right routes. I don't think these guys are running the right routes. I think these wide receiver, like, okay, so I said, like, there's a good analogy you can make: Jets to the Packers, because Rodgers left the Packers. He was frustrated that they didn't have good wide receiver talent. There isn't a single offensive player on the Jets I would take over any of the Packers starters. Not a single one. Not even Wilson, who I think is all right, not great. He's not a one. He might be a one if you had another good second wide receiver, but he's not a one. He doesn't. I don't see he is, because I don't think he runs good routes. And I don't think Rodgers is comfortable throwing to him. And I think the 3 interceptions are because he forced a lot of balls, not because of that defense. He did force passes because Minnesota's defense is good. Anyway, I just don't think it's all on Rodgers. I think their offensive players are weak.
Yeah, I think we're kind of seeing how overrated Rodgers is, because we look at a guy like Mahomes out there with none of his top targets, no running back. He's still able to score points and he's still able to work. I think the biggest difference is Mahomes can still move. I think if
Oh yeah, the
Rodgers had
movement.
that dimension of being able to run around and get out of the pocket, he'd
Yeah.
still be there. But losing that, it's tough. I mean,
Yeah,
he
there's
puts himself.
5 plays. There's 5 plays every week that Mahomes makes that only a few guys can make. Maybe like, and usually, like, when Jackson does that kind of movement, he's just running. I mean, there really are 5 plays a week that Mahomes makes. It seems like that nobody can make. Maybe, very few guys can scramble around the pocket and go sideways and then still make like runs like he ran for that first down last week, or that crazy pass where they had the lateral from Kelsey. I mean, they do make plays that other teams don't. It's just different. And I think Rodgers, you're right. He's more of a statue back there. He's, if he has guys he can still pick guys apart. But, he doesn't scare teams because you can one-dimensionally defend him.
He's got 2 to 3 seconds back there. That's it.
That's
I
it.
mean, after that line's getting to him. And I mean, versus a guy like Mahomes who can run out and make the space and create the play, he's not allowing any time for them to create any space.
That's it.
Now, did you say New York's winning that one?
You know what? I don't know if I bet on this game. I think it's going to be 20. I'm just going to put the score up there as 2017. And we'll just say, I would give the edge to the Bills. I kind of think the Jets might win this one. I'm not going to bet on it because I think it's going to be too much fun to watch. It's going to be a slobber knocker. There's so much on the line here for this one, for the Jets. This is going to be they're going to get great ratings for this game. It's going to be a big game because people want to see what happens next. It's like that show on TV. What happens next? That on the reality show, because people are going to want to see how does Rodgers going to look? Is he going to take it? I mean, It's going to be super interesting. I might bet it. I'll see how the weekend goes. This is kind of a feel game. The Monday game, the Sunday night game, and the Monday games are kind of feels like there's like a feel of the weekend. And those games, it's kind of odd how they play out, but they do. They kind of, there's a feeling where maybe there's an upset, and you'll start to feel it on game day.
Yeah, we've got 4 teams with byes this week. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Rams, the Dolphins, and the Vikings not playing. I think other than that, anything else you have to add to this one?
No, should be another exciting week. And all those teams, by the way, that you have byes, almost all of them need injury help, have injury problems.
Massive injury help for
byes
all
come
of
at a
those
good
teams.
time for them.
Yep. All right. We'll be back next week.